This is Penang, also known as the Pearl of Orient. Georgetown is the capital city of the state of Penang. And millions of visitors come here every year from around the world and within the region. Since listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2008, the city has been developing so fast. Even though a lot of local residents are generating income from the widespread of tourism, others are concerned by the price it comes along with.
It's such a the property shoot up, the property price shoot up, so the development is growing too fast, and due to that, all this it's growing too fast until the drainage system has not been concentrated, and so the floods. It occurs the floods quite often over here in Penang.
So right now we are trying to promote nature as well. I believe I can see more benefits than the disadvantage.
A lot of similar World Heritage Sites around the world have been previously affected by over-tourism.
Mass tourism in Spain has threatened further attacks after targeting British holiday
tourists for driving up the cost of rents and basic necessities beyond.
There's been growing unease in Europe at the number of tourists flooding in, and later there's going to be...
In this short documentary, we are going to examine the impact of over-tourism on the local residents in this interesting city.
I came here in 1995, and then I was working in the inner city in Georgetown, but I was living in the suburbs. And then after a few years, the office moved to the suburbs, so I moved to the inner city to live. So I've had the enjoyment of living in both sides of the world here.
I was born in Penang, to be specific, in the center of Penang, which is the capital city of Penang, which is Georgetown. My primary school in Penang, my secondary school in Penang as well. When I did my undergraduate degree, then only I moved out from Penang. So I'll say that Penang is really my home.
This city was so amazing. It had architecture that was influenced from different parts of the world, from India and originally from India and from China, and then later all the modern influences that came in with the glass windows and metal frame windows, all these new things that were coming in from the West. So it's fascinating architecture.
When Penang was granted the World Heritage Site, so it is mandatory for the local authority, for the state government to ensure certain area of the Penang which has been gazetted as the World Heritage Building to be preserved. So with that, it more or less will give some what we call positive side, because otherwise, maybe in 10-20 years when you visit Penang, you will see that Penang is no more Penang as before.
There was an enthusiasm for tourism, which meant we had government-sponsored street markets, which one was in Armenian Street, and that actually was one of the big influences on the prices of properties. People saw that there were so many tourists in the street that they would actually try and move on a tenant so that they can get a wealthier tenant to come in and have a tourist shop there. So we saw massive change after that. Influences of every time you have something renovated, it encourages more people to come in, and therefore the old tenants are moved on. And I work in conservation, so I work try very hard never to work on a project where somebody's had to be evicted, because you lose the soul of the city, and that's what's been happening all along.
New fresh graduate, after they started to work, they can't afford to buy a house due to the high price of the house. House price is very high, and then the salary, and then the what we call salary and the house prices, they cannot balance with their salary.
I very scared my son maybe more have a like challenger like that.
It is not because that this local didn't want to get back to the island, because they can't afford. You know, it's no point for you to just rent apartment, a house, whereby at the end of the day you earn nothing, you gain nothing. So actually they have moved to the mainland area of what we call such as Seberang Perai. This is whereby, you know, more affordable property for them.
Those are not tourists, they are investors. Maybe they come to our city, they come to our country, and then they love this place very much. And then with the trend that is going on, there are a lot of developments around, and they just buy the properties here. But the downside is, due to the surge in demand, the property prices have certainly gone up a lot. But that is not just happening in Malaysia, it happens in everywhere in the world.
Like in Amsterdam, there's the suggestion that if you buy a property in Amsterdam, you must live in it. So the buy-to-let is not going to be as lucrative as it used to be. Governments are looking at other ways to stop the Airbnb and other such intrusions into communities, to try and keep the communities intact and to stop the pressure on the prices of properties. And that's something that we really need to look to here, because the pressure on the properties is enormous, and the pressure on the owners. Especially now we have a lot of tenants have moved out, a lot of events have taken over, which is actually meaning that the community traditional events are depleting, which is very sad to see.
I don't believe that tourists have a bad impact, because when tourists come over here, they actually showcase Malaysia to the whole world.
Maybe about the driving a little bit, but if I want to compare from KL and Penang, KL is much worse, so Penang is okay. For me, Penang is much better.
There, it was an ice factory that was closed. It became an Indian restaurant. That didn't work, so they turned it into an Indian bar. That didn't work, and now it's a chicken rice. I think there's something else in between, but this is what's happening. That's only over a couple of years, where in the past that chicken rice may have been there for centuries.
The hill area in Penang has been developed in order to build up a residential area. So as long as this situation is not controlled well, so the flood won't solve.
The only sort of sign of a local community is the call for prayer, because that one is regular, it will always be here. And a lot of other signs have just disappeared, as gentrification or just vacating the properties, emptying them out, has been happening. So although it's still fun for people to come and visit, it's very tough to try and live here. It's just not as it was.
I'm worried about those developments that happen. It is because it does actually reduce the original physical outlook of Penang.
To celebrate the World Heritage Site is actually detrimental to the few communities that are still here, and they are really struggling to survive. So if that's not managed properly, then it is going to cause even more damage than it's already done.